barely a time to breathe, let alone to get into the time zone required for the Japanese Grand Prix. Completely different to Singapore, even though they're in the same part of the world, because Singapore, of course, being a night race, basically operates at European afternoon race times. So everybody having to very quickly adjust. Suzuka looking brilliant. Great to be back at such a wonderful circuit. But the big question was, well, two questions, three really. First was, would Red Bull be back where they normally are? Was Singapore an anomaly? Was it based on a new technical directive from the FIA, which might have hurt them more than any other team? Second question, was Charles Leclerc going to be able to take the game back to Carlos Sainz after several weeks of looking pretty much the other driver at Ferrari? And thirdly, would the Pirelli compound choice of the hard compound again bring McLaren right back into the frame? Well, the answer to the questions are, firstly, Red Bull right back where we've seen them all year, apart from Singapore, really, really quick, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Secondly, Charles Leclerc, yes, indeed, embracing Suzuka as a sort of circuit which does flatter his driving, if that's the right word. It suits the way he drives. He can get more out of the car, more out of the circuit with these sorts of corners, looking really good as well. Not that Carlos Sainz wasn't looking very strong too, so very good day for Ferrari, albeit Red Bull definitely dominated in terms of pace. And then, yes, McLaren looking really good as well. And I say really good, up there, almost with Ferrari, maybe with Ferrari, and definitely at the moment ahead of Mercedes and Aston Martins. So all of those things happening more or less as we predicted they were going to happen in the live stream on Wednesday. So let's get down to the detail. Obviously, Red Bull and Max itching to find out how this car would go around Suzuka, the RB19. First out of the pits, right at the beginning of practice, straight out there on a set of hard tyres, straight into a flying lap. And almost immediately you could sort of hear the sigh of relief in the Red Bull garage. Yes, we got a race car again. After which Max could he didn't relax in any way, head down, focused, did a really good job in both sessions, but was quick. Whenever he was out, he was quickest. There was a moment when he lost P1 because he went out quite early in FP2 on a set of soft tyres, and then others went quicker, and then he went back on his second set of soft tyres and readjusted the order. So let's have a look then at how they finished on their soft tyre runs, the end of play, if you like, going into the weekend. Max Verstappen, this is all on the soft tyre, Max Verstappen 30.7. Charles Leclerc, as I say, looking really good in the Ferrari again, 31.0, looking full of confidence, looking like a guy that doesn't even want to think about Singapore or Monza or Zandvoort. Looking really good, particularly through the S's, I thought, up the hill, fabulous to watch. Lando Norris, also really good. It should be borne in mind that Max used two sets of soft tyres in FP2, and the two Ferrari drivers and Lando only used one set. So that should be borne in mind a little bit, but I think that's more that Max didn't get a great run on his first set in terms of traffic, and the second set was bang, wow, 30.7. Which left everybody thinking, yeah, well, we knew Singapore was just an anomaly, despite all the whisperings in the garage at the time, and despite all the stuff out in the media there about how the FIA have really clamped down on Red Bull's flexing floors and skid blocks and so forth. Yeah, absolutely back where they belong. Well, I say belong because they have such a great car, Red Bull. Lando 31.2, Carlos 31.2, as I say, looking really strong and looking really good, looking like a really confident race-winning Grand Prix driver, which he is. George Russell, quicker of the two Mercedes drivers by a substantial margin. Lewis looking pretty lost today. He, like George, ran two sets of new tyres, and George did get a time out of that second set. Pretty good lap, a classic George lap. Put Singapore behind us as well. Really, really on the edge. Lewis, 31.9, not looking at all comfortable or confident in the car. Big surprise, really, given that the Mercedes obviously isn't that bad. A, and B, how good Lewis should be around Suzuka. So obviously not happy with the handling, the balance, the feel he's getting from the car. As I say, he did use two sets like Max. 31.9, that's a long, long way from Max. It's a long, long way from George, actually. And afterwards, it was interesting to listen to a bit of the Lewis audio. He said something like, and then he corrected himself, but he said something like, but if I can play a backup role to George. And they said, well, George put in a really good lap today. It's like Lewis has got into this mode now of George, if this is a circuit where George is going to be quicker, he's going to be the backup driver. And it's just like, whoa, where's this coming from? This is a guy that's just renewed his contract And we know how good he is, 7 times world champion. I mean, he needs, like, I mean, Charles Leclerc has rebooted himself going into Suzuka. And the thought occurred after that ridiculous last lap shunt of George's in Singapore. I say ridiculous, unfortunate, whatever you want to describe it, but it shouldn't have happened, obviously. That would have been a changing moment for Lewis Hamilton, particularly with Suzuka as the next race. But at the moment, he looks pretty demoralised and not particularly confident about where things are going. Obviously hoping that when he goes out tomorrow, Saturday, the circuit will have magically picked up grip and the car will feel a lot better. Speaking of that, obviously by their choice of compound, the hardest compound in the range, Pirelli knew that Suzuka was going to be really tough in terms of degradation. And so it's proving already, not only the lateral and vertical loads you get at Suzuka, but also, and it's endless and very fast in many cases, but also the track surface is very tough on the compound. And we'll have a look at second in the fuel runs. You'll see how quickly the tire dig sets in and how this race could be lining up to be a 2-stopper, if not a 3-stopper, given the way it's going. Having said that, the track could pick up grip as the weekend progresses. Equally, there could be rain, it being Suzuka, so and that will wash everything clean again. So just continue to look through these laps. Fernando Alonso, pretty good. I thought 31.5, bearing in mind where they were at Singapore. The Aston Martin looking a lot better here. Lance Stroll, not slow either, 31.8. So they'll be reasonably comfortable to be kind of back where they were. Although at the moment, if Mercedes are struggling, you've got to say Aston Martin are not much better than that. Alex Albon, good lap, very good lap in the Williams, 31.6, and Oscar Piastri too, 31.7. Look at that, the rookie, really good. And Sergio Perez, not that quick, but a very good job today, I thought, on fuel. So no other real surprises there. Liam Lawson looking very good as ever, apart from Pierre Gasly, who didn't get in a good lap, and then later on in the day, well, right at the end, brought out the red flag right at the end of FP2 when he went off going into the second Degner, the downhill right-hander where there's a lot of understeer. He kind of locked up going into that second part and just ran wide and hit the barrier kind of side on, but enough to really bring back the left front suspension, so that brought that out. A bit of a weird mistake, really, for a guy who knows Suzuka really, really well, going right back to his Super Formula days. And we saw last year how well Esteban Ocon went when the Alpine, when he held off Lewis, I think, for the whole race, didn't he? But this will not be good for Pierre Gasly's weekend in terms of the momentum in the garage and when the workload for the team. So let's have a look now at the long runs in FP2. It's a little bit confusing because there are so many different tyres being used. You can see the pattern there of the deg. But I should point out that Max Verstappen was so on top of things and so ahead of the rest of the field that whereas they were trying the new Pirelli test tyre, which was available 2 extra sets for both sessions, Max actually used it for a long run in FP2 on the basis that, well, we know basically where the car is. We might as well use those tyres for the long run because we're going to be quick anyway, and let's just work on the chassis and anything else we want to based on that. The data is going to be completely relevant. So he did that run on the test tyre, and you can see actually probably everybody's thinking, well, I wish we all had this test tyre now for the fuel road. It's a really good run. 36.4, quickest of the day in terms of fuel. 37.5, 37.5, 37.4. Where's the deg? 37.8, 38.0, 38.2. Really good run from Max at the end of FP2. As I say, brought out prematurely and the end premature due to the Pierre accident, but we only lost a couple of laps. So let's have a look at everybody else though. First of all, you'll notice the deg. And you'll also notice the difference in tyre choice. Lando did a lot of laps on the soft tyre. The 2 Ferraris were on the medium tyre. Fernando Alonso on the soft, so you can do a direct comparison there between Fernando and Lando, as you can with George Russell. And Sergio Perez, you can relate to the Ferrari. So let's have a look and see what happened. Lando, 37.2, and then he gets sort of slower and slower, 38.1, 38.5, 38.6, 38.9. You can that's just the deg. But let's see what the average sort of lap time is. You're looking at high 37s, low 38s for a while, if you like. And if you look at Fernando Alonso, he's doing a mid 37 out of the box and then immediately into the 38s and finishes up in the 39s, which Lando didn't even look like doing. So you've got to say that's a big margin for McLaren with fuel on board. Let's have a look at George Russell now, 38.2, 38.5, 38.9, very quickly into the 39s as well. So it looks like, and that's a relatively short run as well. You can see how quickly the tyres on the Mercedes are going off. So it's not just the tyre, it's obviously the chassis. It's chassis related as well, big time. And now let's have a look at the medium tyre runners. Charles Leclerc, 37.9, 38.0, 38.6. I mean, the tyre looks to be more consistent straight away. You can see that. And also you can see he's just a shade quicker than Carlos Sainz on this long run as well as being quicker on the lighter tanks. So 37.6, 38.0, when Carlos is doing 38.4, 39.1, 39.1. Not a lot in it, but that to me is a Charles Leclerc, classic Charles Leclerc, you know, looking pretty good. How does that compare with Sergio Perez, the other driver, quick driver on the medium tyres? Well, quick driver car package, shall we say, on the medium tyres, 37s, then mid 38s, 39s. Yeah, I mean, you could say, yeah, he's ahead of Charles Leclerc there. It's not massively ahead of Charles Leclerc, but he's got probably more consistency, and he's just ahead of Leclerc, but considerable margin, obviously, away from Max Verstappen. So, and that's, as I say, you need to take into account those different compounds, but in order to try to make it a little bit more understandable, I guess is the right word, I've also done some comparisons here, direct comparisons, because say Max ran the soft tyre on a short fuel run in FP1, so it'd be quite interesting to see what he did on in that run. The same with Fernando Alonso ran the medium in FP1. So we can do a comparison there with what Charles was doing, for example, in FP2. So I've lined them up compound for compound here, just some comparisons, albeit that, of course, the track was a little bit quicker in FP2. That needs to be taken into account. So Max in FP1 did a fuel run, not a brilliantly long one, because he did a lot of running on the, not a lot, he did a reasonable amount of running on the hard tyre and the test tyre. So on the soft tyre, I did 37.5, 38, 38.1, 38.5, and then he came in, faffed around a bit, and then 37.6, 37.4. Pretty impressive, as you can see. So let's look at Lando in comparison in FP2 and what he was doing. Low 32s initially, so yeah, good. Then high 38s, very quickly into the high 38, well, 38.7, 38.7, 38.1, 38.5. About the same as, not that far away from Max, you could say, actually, in that first part of that run, where Max goes out later on, does at 37s, and Lando, who stays out there, is doing 38s. So difficult to compare them probably between two different sessions, but that is an indication to me that Lando Norris and the McLaren, really good. And I've got to say Oscar Piastri looking very good as well, within a couple of tenths of Lando, 3 tenths, a bit like Singapore, but he will get quicker as the weekend progresses. The gap will get smaller, I predict. So Lando looking very good, I think, in the McLaren. Charles Leclerc ran the medium in FP2, as we saw. Fernando Alonso, the medium in FP1. So how do they line up? How good is the Aston Martin here? Well, he doesn't do any 37s. He starts at a 38 and ends up at a 39.7, 39.0, and then back to 38. So you can see there that there's quite a margin between Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari, and the Aston Martin at the moment around Suzuka. And finally, on the hard tyre in FP1, both Ferraris were out on that, and Charles Leclerc 36.5, just a shade slower in terms of his overall time with fuel in the car than Max Verstappen. So that has to be borne in mind as well. So the hard tyre looks to be pretty good. 36.5, let's look at Charles, 36.5, 37.3, 38, 37.2, 30, so it's low 37s basically. And Carlos Sainz doing a good run on the high to mid 37s as well. So that hard tyre looks very competitive. That's not a tyre, for example, that we've seen the Mercedes on yet. So although they're talking a lot about the tyre deg, you know, on the hard tyre they may find it a different story tomorrow, Saturday at Suzuka. Good to see Seb Vettel's biodiversity black and yellow curbs getting a reasonable amount of publicity. Good stuff. I'm sure Sting would approve of all that. Known as Sting because he first appeared in a jazz band wearing the black and yellow stripes of a bee. And I'm sure everybody knew that one. Anyway, that's it for Friday. Looking forward to Saturday. I'm sure the pattern will continue. Red Bull and Max look just to be in a class of their own at the moment. Sighs of relief, as I say, all round at Red Bull, back to normal. For the Red Bull fans, obviously very good news. For everybody else, extremely bad news. But we'll see how it all pans out tomorrow. See you then.